Well, this is my first edition of Hunt Camp Mail on my YouTube channel, where I'm going to be reading email and answering questions from my viewers. This is a completely new format for me, and I'm trying to work out something unique here that won't bore you to death. So here we go. Our first question of the month is from Peter in Idaho. Peter asked, Desert Dog, overall, what's your favorite hunting boot? Well, Peter, I have boots that I favor for warm climates and boots that I tend to favor for cold climates. One boot really isn't going to do it all in my opinion, but if you aren't hunting in, the really hot season openers in places like California or Arizona and aren't hunting in Africa, I think that the Kenetrek Mountain Extreme boots are probably the most versatile, well-rounded hunting boot for a large variety of different locations. These uninsulated boots are always warm when the weather's down in the 20s, but won't turn my feet into a sweaty mess if it's 70 degrees outside either. They also provide a lot of good ankle and sole support so you can walk through the toughest terrain that any hunt has to offer. So I'd call the Kenetrek Mountain Extreme boot the best overall hunting boot if it's not too hot or too cold where you hunt. Our next question is from Jorge in Mexico. Jorge stated, thank you for releasing your roosterfish. Too many people where I live kill them and even catch them in nets. Well, you're welcome, Jorge. I fished all over Mexico for most of my life, and I've seen firsthand the devastation that inshore gill netting has caused to fish populations down there. It got especially bad in the Sea of Cortez, in my opinion. Luckily, some resort owners and local communities in coastal Mexico have bypassed dealing with corrupt government officials and took it upon themselves to run off the gill netters in their area. In these areas, fish like the mighty roosterfish is thriving again. I release all my billfish, roosterfish, tarpon, and most sharks I catch as a conservation measure so we can enjoy the resources well into the future. So that's an excellent point, and I always release my roosterfish, and I recommend that everybody else does too. And I've talked to a couple of Mexicans that have actually eaten roosterfish, and they tell me it's pretty poor quality meat anyway, so there's no reason to keep these great game fish. Our next question is from Ulysses from Nevada. Ulysses wrote me a pretty long and flattering letter here. I'm going to read you kind of a synopsis of it. Ulysses is a Louisiana native that grew up in California and currently lives in Nevada. He wrote me this long and flattering letter, where he asked, I heard you mention you were preparing for another African safari. I heard you say you were taking the 458 lot. Did you ever contemplate taking the 416 Remington Magnum? Yes, I had a trip planned to hunt Zambia and Zimbabwe last month, but the trip was canceled due to the COVID-19 outbreak, which basically negated 2 years of planning, saving, paperwork, and preparation on my part. It was an enormous letdown for me, and hopefully I can get the same hunt going next year, hopefully. Anyway, to answer your question, I was definitely going to take my 416 Remington Magnum with me and leave the lot at home for this trip. My 416 and my 30-06 were pretty much packed and ready to go for that trip. Our next question comes from Colin from the United Kingdom. Colin asked, I've been enjoying your channel for about a year now, and it's refreshing to listen to your no-nonsense approach to rifles and ballistics. I shoot a CZ 550 and 30-06, and am planning to hunt Namibia once more next year. A game hide rifle slip would make a fine souvenir. Can you recommend the taxidermist who made yours? Yeah, I actually can. It's this one right here. You can see in the corner right there. And thank you for the kind words, Colin. To answer your question, my zebra skin rifle case was made by Highveld Taxidermy in South Africa. I've utilized Highveld, extensively, and they always do great work for me. In Namibia, though, taxidermists are really hit or miss, so it might be best to pay for a dip and pack and have your zebra skin rifle case made back home. I don't know what the taxidermists are like in the UK, but we have some excellent ones here in the States. And our next question is from Stan in Bella Vista, Arkansas. Stan asks, I'd like to hear more about the Hornady PRC offering, especially the 6.5, and how they compare to other calibers of the same bore diameter. To me, whenever these new whiz-bang cartridges come out, I'm usually scratching my head, especially with the nozzler stuff. Realistically, from a hunting perspective, the 6.5 PRC does what the 264 Win Mag has done for, 60 years, and what the 6.5 284 has done for at least 20 years. Ballistics aside, though, the PRC does have a better case design than the 6.5 284. So, how the 6.5 Creedmoor case design is a little bit better than the 260? Well, the 6.5 PRC's case design is also a little bit better than the 6.5 284. So, the PRC isn't a bad cartridge. Just realize that from a hunter's perspective, it's nothing new under the sun. Hornady's marketing is the big push for this round, not demand by hunters or target shooters for something completely different in the 6.5 category. And our next question is from Luke in Northridge, California. Basically right over the grapevine from me. Luke asked, I'm writing to ask if you could recommend an area where I could hunt pigs with my new Model 70. I live in Northridge, which is a suburb of Los Angeles. Any advice would be greatly appreciated. Luke also asks, I took a chance on some Barnes Vortex ammunition because it was the only lead-free stuff I could find at the time, and none of them are loose like the ones you had when you stopped recommending them. Maybe they've corrected the problem they were having. Well, Luke, let me answer your first question first. Unfortunately, hunters never give up their hunting locations. Myself, I've been burned every time I gave up a location or took a buddy with me to one of my secret locations, so I don't do that anymore. Public land hunters put in many hours of hiking, putting out game cameras and scouting areas in order to put meat in the freezer. Most successful public land hunters put in 10 times more effort finding a good spot than they do actually hunting it. So chances are slim that somebody's going to give you their spot so you can go shoot the game animals that they worked for. For these reasons, I highly recommend paying to hunt private land, which is where 90% of the wild pigs are in California. But if that's not an option to you, the best places to hunt pigs on public land are all in A and B zones, so you got to work hard to find them. On the Barnes ammunition question, the loose bullet problems only seem to be with the Magnum cartridges. So your 30-06 in theory should be fine. I honestly don't have any idea if Barnes fixed the problem or not because I haven't bought a box of Barnes Vortex ammunition since the last bad box, and the conversation I had with the rep at Barnes really didn't leave me confident in that product anymore. Okay, and our next question is from Mirza Adil, and he asked, Please recommend one rifle within $1,000. Then he lists his choices as a used Model 70, a used Model 700, a new Weatherby Vanguard, or a new Bergara rifle. Well, Mirza, if your budget really is $1,000, you should really get a new Model 70 in my opinion. A brand new Winchester Model 70 Sporter will be well within your budget. Here's an example I'm going to put up on the screen right now. But if your only choices are the 4 rifles that you listed in your letter, I can't really give you an answer without inspecting the conditions of the used rifles first, especially the bore and throat to see how worn out the rifle is. So, blindly, I can't recommend any used rifle to you without personally inspecting it first. Our next question is from Monica in Key West, Florida, the Conch Republic. Monica asked, Desert Dog, what is your favorite fish to catch? Well, Monica, I hope all is well in paradise. Looks like you guys barely missed a bad storm last week, and hopefully things open up down there, so I can get back to the Conch Republic. Beck and I were pretty devastated that Lobster Fest was canceled this year because that's probably one of our favorite things in the country to attend. Anyway, back to the question. To me, the greatest game fish of them all is the Dorado, or what you call dolphin fish over there, mahi-mahi if you're in the Pacific Islands. The Dorado is a fantastic acrobatic fighter. It's easy to catch. It tastes fantastic just about any way you cook it. And its amazing growth rate and spawning habits make it a very sustainable resource in our oceans. So to me, if I only caught Dorado for the rest of my life, I'd still be a happy fisherman. Our next question is from Garrett. Garrett asks, what are your thoughts on the 416 Ruger round and bullet selection? I just stumbled into a great deal on an M77 Hawkeye Alaskan and 416 Ruger, and the only commercial ammo I can find is Hornady Solids and DGX bonded ammo. Going to hand load for it and debating on a Swift A-frame or Barnes TSX load, but want to hear your thoughts about the cartridge and rifle. Well, Garrett, I hate to say this, but the 416 Ruger is my least favorite of all the 416s. I'm also just not a big fan of the M77 rifle, especially in larger calibers. The M77 doesn't have dual recoil lugs or dual cross pins like the Model 70, or the Model 70 Safari Express or the CZ550 do. To me, the trigger on the M77 stinks. It lacks a hooded front sight. It has a horrible recoil pad, and I really don't like the fact that Ruger helped Clinton ban assault weapons and high-capacity magazines, and the fact that Bill Ruger was a big communist and hated America, which, it's hard for me to get over. But all of that aside, factory ammo availability also really sucks for the 416 Ruger, which is pretty much almost a dead cartridge right now. But if you're dead set on getting the rifle and loading for it, I highly recommend that you shoot the Swift A-frame. The Swift A-frame is the only dangerous game bullet I've ever seen that everybody likes. Okay, and our next question is from Jeff. Jeff wrote, I am an avid fan of your channel and lover and owner of 2 Pre-64 Winchesters. One of them is a 1953 300 H&H. I'm working up some load data for 180 grain bullets. Attached is a picture of the 300 H&H. Well, I'm going to post a picture of Jeff's 300 Pre-64 Model 70 and 300 H&H Magnum, and it's a 1953 model. And here's a picture of that beauty right now. Well, that's one hell of a nice looking rifle there, Jeff. I've never seen a 300 H&H that didn't like shooting the 180 grain Nosler partitions. Using 180 grain partitions and H4350 or even better H4831 shortcut powder, it's always been a good combination for me. And our next question is from Joel in Myers Lake, Alaska. Joel wrote, "Glad to be able to contact you. Just want to say thanks for all your videos filled with so much information. This summer, I found myself sitting on the side of the highway watching dirt and rock being moved. Road construction about 50 miles north of Glen Allen, Alaska. So I've had some time to watch your videos. I've not had much of an interest in the big bore rifles until I watched some of your videos. Then I discovered a coworker selling his 375 H&H Magnum. Well, Joel from Fort Myers, Alaska, get that 375 H&H. In Alaska, the 375 H&H is considered to be the perfect brown bear cartridge. In fact, in Jones's book, Ask the Brown Bear Grizzly Guides, he surveys most of the major bear guides, and the majority of them recommend that 375 H&H for brown bears. So I would get it if I were you. The price was right. Our next question is from Bobby from the Northeast. Bobby wrote, I recently purchased a Winchester Model 70 Safari Express in 375 H&H and topped it with a Leupold VX6 1-to-6 power, and your videos were very helpful in deciding. In the interest of getting as much practice in the field as I possibly can, I'm considering hunting the rapidly approaching fall whitetail season here in the Northeast with this rifle. While I recognize the 375 H&H is most certainly a lot of gun for whitetail, I was also wondering if you had any suggestions for a bullet weight construction that's appropriate for both whitetail and possibly black bear. Good, we have another 375 H&H question. Maybe I need to do a video on the 375 H&H. It's got a huge fan base out there. Anyways, Bobby, the 375 is definitely overkill for deer and black bears, but it's still fun to hunt with and does the job in spades. I've shot big hogs, bears, and lots of plains game with my 375 H&H and really have nothing to complain about. If I were you, I'd load either the 235 grain Woodley weld core or the 260 grain Nosler partition for that gun if you're going to shoot deer. I wouldn't use Barnes bullets or A-frame bullets in this caliber on deer because those will probably pencil right through your deer. You want something that expands a little bit better, and there's nothing more reliable at doing that at lower velocities than a Nosler partition is. Our next question is from Joe in Reno, Nevada. Joe asked, how do you get your wife into hunting and fishing with you? Man, that's the question of questions right there. And I have to be very careful with my answer too because my own wife watches these videos. But I would say that you can't convert a spouse or make a person outdoorsy. She has to be like that already. When I met my wife, she was already welding and doing engine work on her Jeep. She was out camping, more than I was. She had her own fishing gear and loved the outdoors. I didn't make her do anything. She was already like that. My wife and I share common interests and basically do everything together. She can outshoot me, outfish me, and outdrink me most of the time, and trust me, we're very competitive with each other too, which is probably good for our relationship. But forcing your wife to enjoy your hobbies is usually a recipe for disaster that won't end well for either of you. Nobody gains anything if your wife is miserable sleeping in a straw hut in the middle of Zambia, Nobody gains anything if your wife is miserable sitting in a boat trolling the ocean to a froth all day. When the wife is miserable, she'll make damn sure that you're going to be miserable too. That's just the way it works. And men are no different. If you're miserable shopping at the mall, then guess what? You're going to make her miserable too. So couples can compromise and enjoy a little bit of each other's interest together, but don't overdo it or take it to the extreme, because, you're more likely to fight or nag each other to death than to have a good time. So basically, I got lucky with my girl. Next question is from Paul in Alabama. Paul wrote, I've been watching your channel for the last year or so, and I've really enjoyed it immensely. You and I shared admiration for the Winchester Model 70. I picked up a great deal from various videos you've released. I've also chuckled at some of your comments. My favorite was about the guys who throw their rifles on their shoulders and muzzle everybody in Africa to look cool, but use a sling hunting the rest of the world. Yeah, the sling thing has annoyed me for years. The best of the West guys are the funniest to me. And I almost watch that show sometimes just to laugh. They carry around their 7mm Remington Magnums on their shoulders in the open country of the East Cape of South Africa, but somehow need a sling when they're navigating through the thickets chasing mule deer here in the States. It totally cracks me up, and they're not the only ones who do it. To Craig Boddington's credit, he's probably the only gun guy on the internet that points out this fallacy. But our next question comes from Brannick in Minnesota. Minnesota, don't you know? And Brannick asked, what is your favorite type of fishing? Well, Brannick, I like it all. I mean, bluegill to blue marlin. If I got a rod in my hand, I'm happy. Whether I'm visiting my son in Montana and doing some fly fishing on the Clark Fork, or I'm down in the Coral Sea off the coast of Cairns fishing the Great Barrier Reef, or, I'm sitting here at a local lake with a beer in my hand and my pole in the water trying to catch a catfish. I'm happy. I love all fishing. So there's no particular type of fishing I like better than another. Although, I tend to favor maybe inshore saltwater fishing the most, but I enjoy all fishing. And our next question is from Frank from Miami Lakes, Florida. Frank asks, I wanted to say that after careful consideration, you swayed me into buying my first .30 caliber in a 300 Holland & Holland. I got some 175 grain LRXs, and I'm going to load with H4350 with 215 matched primers. Would you share the velocities you're getting with that combination? Frank also asks, been thinking of taking my 10-year-old boy to Africa. Was wondering if you could discuss how to book a good pH and what you think the best region would be for a first-time hunt. Well, Frank, to answer your first question, using the 175 grain LRX, my current accuracy node is at 3,020 feet per second. That's with my 300 H&H. But I'm using H4831 shortcut powder to do it, not H4350. So if you can get a pound or two of H4831 shortcut to use, I highly recommend doing that because it's also a great powder for the 300 H&H. On the second question, taking a child that young on an African hunting trip shouldn't really be a problem, but it will limit the style of hunt that you can do. I would definitely limit a hunt with a 10-year-old to one of the high fence game lodges in South Africa or Namibia. These aren't really canned hunts, but they're more of controlled hunts where dangers from four-legged and two-legged animals are at a minimum, as are the physical requirements of the hunt. So these game lodges are also comfortable and accommodating enough to where a 10-year-old will have access to nearby activities, like national parks, and have a variety of food options to choose from, and be a lot more comfortable. Most first-time hunters and families that like to hunt use lodges in the Limpopo region and the East Cape region of South Africa. So I'd start looking there first. And our last question of the month is from Thomas in Belgium. Thomas asks, did you ever experience hunting in Europe and or making a video about both the differences and equalities in USA versus Euro hunting culture? A lot of people find this topic super interesting. Wow, that's obviously the question of the month right there. That's a great question, Thomas, and a very thought-provoking question. I actually do often think about the differences between European and North American hunting culture. Yes, we both put the same bullets in animals and consume the meat, but that's really where the similarities stop, isn't it? I mean, especially with German hunters with their traditions dating back to St. Hubert. I actually have a great answer for you, but it's going to be very long, and I think the answer deserves its own video topic. So yeah, you prompted me to probably make another video. So I'll put together a video in the next few days discussing the differences between North American and European hunting cultures. And thank you for the fantastic question, Thomas. Well, that concludes the first monthly edition of Hunt Camp Mail. Hopefully you enjoyed my views and opinions, and we can keep this going every month. Remember, my contact information is desertdogoutdoors@gmail.com. That's desertdogoutdoors@gmail.com. Well, thanks for watching, and as always, good hunting.